Welcome to the Friendly Podcast Guide, sorting through podcasts so you don't have to. I'm Andy Smiley, and I want to help you discover the right podcast without having to listen to an entire episode. Now, let's talk podcasts. Hi there, welcome back. This is the second episode this week because it's still my birthday month. I hope you're enjoying hearing from me more often. The podcast I'm talking about today is called Hollywood Unscripted, and it pulls the curtain back to help us understand the creative people that help Hollywood do its thing. Jenny Curtis is the host, and I am so excited to have her back. She told me all about Solar, another podcast she's part of, in an episode a couple of weeks ago. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. You should definitely go back and give it a listen. Before we hear from Jenny about all of the interesting people she gets to talk to, here are some details about the show. The show description is a show for film lovers by film lovers. Hollywood Unscripted delves into illuminating and unique conversations with top professionals in the entertainment industry. Hear stories and lessons from behind the scenes of the biggest blockbusters and most admired features in film history, featuring candid conversations with Hollywood legends, moguls, auteurs, and other industry insiders. Host Jenny Curtis goes far beyond the standard celebrity interview to take listeners inside the creative process. The length of each episode is about an hour, and the kid-friendliness of the podcast depends on the episode. But Jenny says that if the episode has strong language or things that you might not want your kids to hear, they let you know. The series is ongoing, with new episodes available when Jenny interviews someone and puts it out. So I would say just subscribe and be happily surprised when a new episode lands in your podcast app. Before we learn more about the vibe of the show, we're going to take a quick break to talk about leaving a rating or review for the Friendly Podcast Guide. Would you rate and review the Friendly Podcast Guide as a gift from me for my birthday? The two main places to do that are on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It would mean so much to me if you could give me a positive review. I read every single one, and they make my heart so happy. Now we get to hear from Jenny about how the pandemic aided in her ability to start hosting the show. I am so excited to have Jenny Curtis back. This time we get to talk about her other podcast, Hollywood Unscripted. And holy cow, I cannot wait to hear how this started and how it's going. So first of all, Jenny, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
I can. I'm Jenny Curtis, and I'm a producer at Kurtco Media, a podcast producer. And if you heard the last episode I was on, I directed, produced, and am one of the voices in our audio drama Solar. But today we're talking about my other show, Hollywood Unscripted. I'm a host and a producer of Hollywood Unscripted, where I talk to filmmakers and actors and writers and all sorts of people in the entertainment industry because I love all things creative and I'm obsessed with storytelling. So talking to people who make film and series and everything is just, it's near and dear to my heart, and it kind of inspires me to keep doing the thing that I like doing. So
I love that. So tell me, why did you start making this podcast?
Originally, let's see. So originally I was actually a producer on the show, and we had another host. His name was Scott Talal, and we were affiliated with the Malibu Film Society. So this was kind of an extension of that, where they would discuss awards, movies, and all of that. And that kind of fell by the wayside during the pandemic, which if anybody had heard, we had a little bit of a pandemic, and it kind of threw a wrench into some things, but
like everything.
Yeah, into like everything. It was a time. It still is a time. Oh, here we are. But so I started hosting in the interim, just being like, we're stuck at a computer. Why not? I can chat with people. And this is something that I'm just curious about people. And I'm having the sudden opportunity to talk to these amazing creatives. So why not? And I kind of thought it would be like a couple months of a thing. And then we would go find a new host, or we would give up the show or whatever. And it kind of stuck because I realized I am having a blast talking to these people, and we keep having these amazing guests. And so I kind of accidentally stumbled into being the host of the show, but it's really fun. So I kept doing it because why not?
Definitely. And what do you want people to get out of Hollywood Unscripted?
You know, I think it's definitely a show that's geared toward people who love the entertainment industry, who love movies, who love TV, who feed off of behind the scenes stories. I think that's definitely our audience number one. Of anybody who loves that, you'll love this show because, I'm hearing stories I had never heard before from people on sets of films that I love. But I think as a second tier to that, it's all these conversations are just listening to people talking about doing what they love. So I think it's a really inspiring show to hear because anybody can relate to pursuing your passion. So I hope it inspires people.
I love that. And it's true. I did get to listen to the episode with Darcy. Oh, dang it. What's her last name?
Darcy Carden. Yeah.
Holy cow. She is an inspiration.
Oh,
so much fun and so entertaining. I was just like, man, you're awesome. So
that one was a real blessing too, because she's one of the first ones that I got to interview in person. So it was kind of post, we've all had our vaccines and suddenly people are starting to do things in person again. So I got to sit in a room with her, talking to her, and the one before that was Fran Kranz, who's a filmmaker and an actor. And it just, I know right now you and I are talking to each other virtually and it's lovely, but there's something really different and special when you're sitting in a room with someone having a conversation. So we'll do this all again when we're in the same city, basically, is right? What I'm saying.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, it is just a different level. It's fun that we can see each other and then we get to do this on our own time in our own houses, but it is just a different level of conversation when you get to sit down next to someone and
look into their actual eyes.
Definitely. I love that. How would you describe the vibe of Hollywood Unscripted?
I mean, it changes from episode to episode depending on who the guest is, but I do think it's like sitting down at a restaurant and having a chat with a friend. It's very casual. The conversation is somewhat structured sometimes, and then sometimes meanders all over the place, depending on who I'm talking to.
I know this is hard, but what is your favorite episode or set of episodes and why?
It is hard because it literally is each episode is so special to me because I took something from each of them. One of them would definitely be Alfred Molina, who is just a stunningly kind man. And we talked about things that aren't his most successful. They're successful, but they aren't like the movies that people would have jumped to knowing him from today, like Spider-Man. We talked about The Imposters, which is a fantastic movie and a little short film. And it was very much the love of the craft. And another one that's the love of the craft is Noomi Rapace, who's just an unbelievable actress. And we kind of, instead of talking linearly, talked about how each character bleeds in through other aspects of her life and how she takes care of herself and where the roles led her. And it was a really wonderful river of conversation through her career. There was another one where one of my first solo interviews, I got to interview Jim Sturgis, who I loved him from Across the Universe and 21 and all of these roles that I loved him in from forever ago. So talking to him as one of my first people I was interviewing was kind of surreal. And you mentioned Darcy Carden, and honestly, it was such an amazing time talking to her because I see so much I can relate to in her story. So it was a really kind of a personal conversation for me while really just learning about her life. But really I don't think I've had a single conversation that was a disappointment. They were all really special.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, that would be so fun. That would be it must be a very fun podcast to be a host of.
It is. It's also stressful because I way over research. If I'm going to talk to someone, I do 40 or 50 hours of trying to research, always having their movies on in the background or actually trying to learn everything about them. I over research. So I do stress myself out with this podcast and then it always goes wonderfully and I didn't need to panic.
I get that. I feel like I'm definitely trying hard not to be a worrier. It's hard to change my ways though. So I get that.
Yeah.
And then is this podcast okay for little ears?
It depends on the episode, but we do mark, you'll see if there's an explicit next to it. If you look on Apple or something, some of them have the explicit note because I just kind of let people be who they are, and then we
Sure.
end up swearing or not. But we are pretty conscious of like making sure to mark the ones that are not good for little ears.
Perfect. That's all we need, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add that we didn't touch on yet?
I like the show. It's fun doing it. And if anybody has anybody they want to suggest, send us a message. Or you know, if you're out there and you make film and TV and you want to be on the show, come hit me up. I'll have you on as a guest.
I love that. I will be the in-between. If someone wants to get, like, let me know and I'll let Jenny know.
Perfect.
Fabulous. Oh, and where can people find Hollywood Unscripted?
It's on all podcast platforms. You can just type in Hollywood Unscripted, you know, Apple, Spotify, Samsung, Amazon Music, all the Pocket Casts. I always do this where then I ramble off a whole bunch of platforms. You guys know where you listen to podcasts. You're already listening to this one. So you can find it anywhere. And I honestly don't remember what our handles are on social media. It's probably Hollywood Unscripted or it's Hollywood Unscripted without vowels. I'm not positive.
I'll just link it. Don't worry about it. I'll find it. I'll link it in the show notes. And where can people find you?
Oh, me. You can find me at the Jenny Curtis. That's TheJennyCurtis on Twitter and Instagram. I am most active on Instagram. I'm starting to get more into Twitter. The rest of it, I just, you know, or just find me like lost and wandering, calling out into the night on a street somewhere.
Love it. That would be an interesting way to find you.
It's possible.
I love it. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to hear what my listeners think about Hollywood Unscripted.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me talk about it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to hear about more podcasts from me, please follow or subscribe on your podcast app of choice. And just a reminder, for my birthday month, could you please rate or review this podcast? It would mean the world to me. Talk to you soon. My sweet children crashed my interview with Jenny about halfway through, and they wanted to talk to her about anything and everything, including their water bottles. Okay, show her your water bottle, and then we're heading downstairs. This is her water bottle.
Oh, I love that color. That's a
And
great.
here's the other
Oh,
one.
I love that color. Those are the greatest colors.
Okay, head downstairs.